After a full day of teaching at the public school, I came home exhausted. I saw a new lock on the pantry door. "It's so you don't touch our things," my daughter-in-law said without looking at me. I smiled and said nothing. The next day, the lock was gone, and in its place I left a letter, one that made her hands tremble when she read it. Yes, that's right, you heard me correctly. A padlock, in my own home, on the pantry that I had built myself 25 years ago, back when my Michael was still breathing and this house smelled like freshly brewed coffee and pastries in the mornings. But let me tell you from the beginning, because this story doesn't start with a lock. It starts much earlier. Back when I still believed that being a good mother meant giving everything and expecting nothing in return. My name is Emily. I'm 67 years old, and for 42 of those years, I was an elementary school teacher at Lincoln Elementary, right here in the neighborhood. I taught over 800 children how to read. I gave them comfort when they didn't get it in their own homes, and I never, ever imagined that my own son would make me feel like an intruder in the very place where I raised 3 children and buried 1 husband. That Tuesday, I came home tired. My legs ached after standing all afternoon supervising recess. I was 65 at the time, just about to retire. I came in through the back door like always. I went straight to the pantry to get the shortbread cookies I kept for my afternoon tea. My one little treat after a long day, and there it was, a silver padlock, new, shiny, hanging from the door of MY Pantry, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I just froze. My purse slipped off my shoulder. For a second, I thought I was in the wrong house, that I'd walked through the wrong door. But no. There was the broken tile by the stove that Michael never got around to fixing. There were my basil pots in the window. It was my kitchen, my house. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, you're home." Sarah walked into the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. She was wearing that pink blouse, the one she claimed cost her $500 at some boutique in Beverly Hills. The same amount of money I spent on groceries for the entire week. "What is this?" I asked, pointing to the lock. My voice came out softer than I wanted. I still couldn't understand what I was seeing. She didn't even look up. "Oh, that. It's just that Daniel and I bought some things for ourselves. You know, imported products, organic olive oil, that kind of stuff. And, well, we just don't want it to get mixed up with the other things. It's just to avoid problems." To avoid problems. As if I were the problem. "But Sarah, this is my pantry, my house." She finally looked at me, and in those brown eyes that I once thought were sweet, I only saw coldness. "Oh, Emily, don't take it personally. It's just organization. You have your space, we have ours. It's the healthiest way to live together, don't you think? My space, in my own house, as if I were some tenant they were tolerating. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip that lock off and throw it out the window, but something inside me, that part of me that was always a teacher, the part that learned to measure every word before speaking, it made me stay quiet. I smiled. "Of course, honey. Whatever you say." And I went to my room. I didn't cry that night. I was too furious to cry. I sat on the bed I had shared with Michael for 38 years, and for the first time in 3 years, I allowed myself to see clearly what I had been ignoring. My house was no longer mine. It hadn't happened overnight. It was like when mold grows in the walls. You don't see it until it's already everywhere. If this story is stirring something inside you, subscribe to the channel. Because what comes next? Not even I saw it coming. 3 years ago, when Michael died of a heart attack while watering his geraniums, my world collapsed. I didn't just lose my husband. I lost the sound of his footsteps in the morning, the smell of his aftershave. That way he would hug me from behind while I was cooking. The house became a giant echo. Daniel, my youngest son, came to the funeral with Sarah. They had been married for 2 years. He hugged me and said, "Mom, we're not going to leave you alone. We're moving in with you until you're better." "Temporary," he said, "just until I recovered, but temporary turned into a month, then 6, then a year, and suddenly 3 years had passed, and not only had they not left, they had taken complete possession. At first it was subtle. Sarah started helping by reorganizing the kitchen. "It's just more practical this way, Emily. The heirloom china I inherited from my mother was shoved onto the top shelf where I couldn't even reach it. My old reliable pans were replaced with non-stick pots that she claimed were healthier. Then came the furniture. "That armchair is so old, Emily. We're going to donate it." And my brown armchair where Michael read the newspaper every Sunday disappeared. In its place, they put a modern gray sofa. It was nice, yes, but it wasn't mine. The living room became her home office. My sewing room was filled with boxes of her things. The dining room where we celebrated every birthday, every Christmas. It was now decorated with abstract art that I hadn't chosen, and I foolishly let it happen, because I thought it was love, that they were helping me modernize, that this was just life with young people. But the lock was different. The lock was a message. That night, lying in the dark, I remembered something I told a student years ago. Her name was Lucy. Her older sister treated her badly, took her things, made her feel invisible in her own family. "Lucy," I told her, "never let anyone make you feel small in your own life, not even for love." And I had done exactly that. I stared at the ceiling. The shadows from the street lamp moved like ghosts. And then for the first time in a long time, I felt something stronger than sadness. I felt rage. And that rage, I would soon discover, was exactly what I needed to wake up. Because what Sarah didn't know is that teachers learn to read between the lines. And I had just read her message perfectly. What she also didn't know was that I knew how to write too. Wait until you see what I did with that lock, and what I found later on his laptop. The next day, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't had in years, like when you take off dirty glasses and suddenly see all the details you've been missing. I got up early as always. I made my coffee in the old coffee pot they still allowed me to use, because the Italian pod machine was only for them. I sat in the small space left for me at the breakfast table, and I started to remember. It wasn't sudden. It was like water eroding stone, drop by drop, until you no longer recognize your own home. I let my mind travel back 3 years to the day of Michael's funeral. It was unbearably hot for November. The church was packed. Fellow teachers, neighbors, his domino buddies, the ladies from the market where he bought his cigarettes. Daniel arrived with Sarah. She wore a simple black dress, her hair pulled back. She hugged me gently and said, "Count on me for anything you need, Emily." Her voice sounded sincere, or maybe I just needed to believe it was. After the burial, when everyone left and the house fell into that awful silence only the newly widowed know, Daniel took my hands. "Mom, you can't stay alone. Not now." "I'll be fine, son. Your father taught me to be strong." "I know. But we're still going to stay with you for a while, just until you get back on your feet. The house is huge. We have plenty of room." Sarah nodded beside him with that smile I found so kind back then. "It's temporary, Emily. A few months max. Besides, this way we can save for a down payment on our house and you won't be alone. It's perfect for everyone." Perfect for everyone. What a well-wrapped lie. The first few days were good. Sarah cooked, she cleaned. She even came with me to parent-teacher conferences when I didn't have the energy to go alone. Daniel fixed things around the house that had been broken for years: the water heater, the lock on the garden gate, the leak in the bathroom. I felt accompanied, less empty. But by the 3rd week, Sarah started with her suggestions. "Oh, Emily, these curtains are so old. What if we buy new ones? I have a really good eye for decorating." Those were the terracotta curtains Michael and I chose when we remodeled the living room. But I was so emotionally exhausted, I just said, "Okay, honey, whatever you think is best." A week later, my terracotta curtains were in the trash. In their place were minimalist white ones that let in too much light and made the room feel cold. Then came the dining room. These landscape paintings are so dated. Look, I bought these at a gallery, modern art. They give the room personality. The paintings were of the wine country where Michael and I spent our honeymoon. Every time I saw them, I remembered him in that small inn laughing because we got lost. But when I timidly protested, Sarah had already packed them away. "Don't worry, I put them in a box. Maybe you'll want to see them someday. Someday. As if my own history was optional in my own house. The changes kept coming like waves, each one small, each one well-intentioned. My heirloom china collection. They take up too much space. Let's put them up top. My garden pots. They're so messy. I'm going to reorganize them. The living room bookshelf with Michael's novels. These books are ancient. Should we donate them? And I, still stunned by grief, just nodded. Because I thought I was being difficult, old-fashioned, clinging to the past. But the real change came when they started modifying the routines. Sundays used to be sacred in this house. My 2 daughters, Chloe and Bella, would come over with my grandkids. We'd make a big family dinner. Brisket, pot roast, whatever we felt like. The house would fill with laughter, with kids running around, that beautiful mess of a family gathered together. 3 weeks after they moved in, Sarah suggested, "What if we do the family dinners every 2 weeks? Daniel and I really need Sundays to rest." Then it was, "What if we do it monthly?" And then we just stopped doing them at all. One Sunday, Chloe showed up unannounced with a cake and flowers. Sarah answered the door in her pajamas, looking annoyed. "Oh, Chloe, we didn't know you were coming. We don't have anything prepared. Daniel and I were about to go out." My older daughter looked past her, searching for me. I was in the kitchen, ashamed, not knowing what to say. "I thought we still did family dinners," Chloe said, her voice tense. "Well, yes, but we all live together now. We have to coordinate better, don't you think? Coordinate, as if seeing my own daughter required permission." Chloe left the cake on the table, gave me a cold kiss on the cheek, and left. She didn't come back for 2 months. My friends got the same treatment. My best friend Linda, who I'd had coffee with every Thursday for 20 years, stopped coming. The last time she showed up, Sarah was doing yoga in the living room with techno music blasting. "Oh, sorry, Linda, I didn't know you were coming. This is my workout time." Linda, uncomfortable among the yoga mats and incense, drank her coffee quickly and left. "You should let me know when your friends are coming over," Sarah told me later without looking up from her phone. So I'm not in the middle of my routine. Her routine. In my living room. In my house. Little by little, my social life vanished. And with it, the witnesses to what was happening disappeared. But the worst hadn't arrived yet. The worst was when I started to notice that Sarah wasn't just changing the house. She was changing my son. Daniel had always been affectionate. He called me every few days before they moved in. He'd ask how I was, tell me about his job at the hardware store. He made bad jokes that always made me smile. But now, living under the same roof, he barely spoke to me. He'd come home late from work and go straight to their room. If I tried to ask about his day, he'd answer in monosyllables. "Fine, tired, we'll talk later." But later never came. One night I heard them arguing in their bedroom. The wall was thin. "Your mom asked if we can take her to the doctor on Tuesday," Daniel said. "What for? She's a grown woman. She can go by herself." "Sarah, she's my mom." "Exactly. She's your mom, not mine. I have enough to deal with working and keeping this house in order. I'm not going to be her nurse, too." There was silence. I waited for Daniel to defend me. I waited for him to say anything, but he said nothing. And in that silence, I understood something terrible. My son was choosing her over me. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just with silence, with absence, by letting her speak without contradicting her. I got into bed trembling, not from cold, from helpless rage. The next day I went to the doctor alone, and that's how it was. Alone to the market, alone to the school meetings, even though I was about to retire, alone in this house full of people, feeling emptier every day. Sarah started cooking only for herself and Daniel. She said it was because they were on a special diet. They left their dirty dishes for me to wash. They monopolized the living room TV for their shows. They played music I didn't understand. They had visitors over that they didn't introduce me to. And I just got smaller. Every day a little more invisible in my own life. Until the lock showed up. And that lock was the last straw. Because I realized something. They weren't sharing my house. They were taking it from me. But what they didn't know is that I still had an ace up my sleeve. Something not even Daniel knew about. My son looked at me as if I were a piece of old, inconvenient furniture. And that hurt more than 1,000 locks. Daniel was born on a July morning with thunder outside and my hand squeezing Michael's until it turned purple. It was a difficult birth, 36 hours of labor. But when I held him on my chest for the first time, his eyes barely open. I swore I would protect him from everything. I never imagined that one day I would need to protect myself from him. Or rather, from his silence. Because Daniel didn't hurt me with yelling or insults. He hurt me by disappearing. By becoming a ghost who lived in my house but no longer lived with me. It was Wednesday. I remember because on Wednesdays, I got home from school early around 2. I used to find him in the kitchen eating lunch. We'd talk about everything, about his job at the hardware store, how his customers were, about that boss who, according to him, didn't even know how to use a hammer. But that Wednesday, 3 days after the lock incident, I came home and the house was silent. Sarah wasn't there. Daniel was. I saw him sitting in the living room frowning at his phone. "Son," I said from the doorway, "have you eaten? I can make us some breakfast burritos." He glanced up for just a second. "I'm not hungry, Mom, thanks." And he went back to his screen. I just stood there, my bag still on my shoulder, feeling like I had just spoken to a wall. "Are you okay?" "Yeah." "Did something happen at work?" "No." "Daniel, look at me." He sighed, that long sigh you use when someone is bothering you. He put the phone down on the sofa and finally looked at me, but his eyes were empty, as if he saw me but didn't recognize me. "What's wrong, Mom?" "That's what I'm asking you. We don't talk anymore. You don't tell me anything. You live here, but it's like you're not here." He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he'd had since he was a kid when he was uncomfortable. "I'm just tired. Work is stressful. Don't take it personally." "Don't take it personally." The same exact words Sarah used about the lock. "And Sunday Chloe told me you invited her to eat with you, but you didn't tell me." His face changed. He tensed up. "It was a last-minute thing. I thought you had plans." "What plans would I have? I live here. This is my house." "Mom, don't start." "Start what? Start wanting to talk to my own son?" He stood up from the sofa. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "Look, Sarah and I are trying to build our life. We need space. We can't always be thinking about me. You can't be thinking about me. It's not that. Then what is it? Silence. That damned silence that had become his answer for everything." "I have to go," he said finally. "Sarah's waiting for me." And he left, just like that, leaving me with words stuck in my throat and a heart shattered to pieces. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, remembering the boy Daniel used to be, the one who climbed into my bed when he had nightmares, the one who drew me pictures in elementary school and stuck them on the fridge with pride, the one who hugged me tight and said, "When I grow up, I'm going to build you a huge house, Mom, with a garden and everything." Where did that boy go? The following days were worse. Daniel started avoiding me completely. He left before I got up. He came home late when I was already in my room, and when we did pass in the kitchen or the hallway, he'd look down and walk faster, as if I were an awkward stranger. But what finally broke me was what I discovered a week later. It was Saturday morning. Sarah had left early for the hair salon. That weekly routine she claimed was essential and cost $300 every time. Daniel was in the shower, and I, cleaning the living room as I always did. I found a manila envelope stuffed between the sofa cushions. I didn't want to snoop. I really didn't. But the envelope had the bank's logo on it, and it was open. Inside was a bank statement, my son's, and there was also a piece of paper, in my handwriting. A letter I had written 2 years ago when Daniel asked to borrow money. My hands started to shake as I read it. "Mom, I promise I will pay you back the $180,000 as soon as we get the loan approved. It's for the down payment on our house. Sarah and I already found a perfect one in the suburbs. I swear on Dad's memory I will pay you back. I love you. Daniel." $180,000. The savings Michael and I had put together for years, for our retirement. The money I kept for emergencies, so I wouldn't be a burden on anyone in my old age. I lent it to him because he was my son, because I trusted him, because he told me it was for their house. But according to the bank statement in my hands dated just 1 month ago, there was no house. There was a charge for $320,000 from Premium Auto Imports. A car. They had bought a luxury car with my money and the bank loan, and they never told me. I felt the floor move. I sat down on the sofa because my legs wouldn't hold me. I read the statement again and again, looking for a mistake, any explanation other than the obvious one. But there was no mistake. My son had lied to me. He had used me. He had taken my life savings and spent it on an impulse to please his wife. I heard the shower turn off, Daniel's footsteps approaching. I quickly put the papers back in the envelope and left it where it was. When he came out, hair-wet towel around his neck, he looked at me surprised. "Oh, you're here." "Yes, I was cleaning." He nodded, uncomfortable. He went to the sofa, picked up the envelope without a word, and went to his room. He didn't even pretend to have an explanation. That afternoon, when Sarah returned with her hair freshly styled and her nails painted bright red, I saw her differently. I watched her get into that brand-new gray sedan parked outside, the one they supposedly bought with their savings, with my savings, and something inside me broke for good. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal. It was knowing that my own son saw me as a bank, as someone he could take from without giving, as someone whose needs didn't matter. That night, while they ate dinner in the kitchen, talking and laughing as if nothing was wrong, I stayed in my room. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. Instead, I felt something cold and clear, a decision forming like ice in my chest. I opened my closet. I moved the old shoe boxes, and I pulled out the blue tin box my mother left me before she died. Inside were things Daniel didn't know about, things Sarah could never imagine, documents, deeds, and a will that was still in my favor. Because it turns out my son forgot something very important. This house had an owner, and that owner was still alive, still sane. And now, she was very, very angry. What came next? Not even I saw it coming. But when I did it, it changed everything forever. In the back of my closet, I kept something they didn't know existed, my real power. The blue tin box was barely a foot long. It had faded flowers painted on the lid and a small dent in the corner, a reminder of when it fell during the move to this house 25 years ago. To anyone else, it was just an old, worthless object, but to me, it was a war chest. I took it out that Saturday night after discovering the truth about the money. I placed it on my bed carefully, as if unearthing something sacred. My hands trembled as I opened the rusty lid. The smell of old paper hit me first. Then I saw what was inside. Yellowed envelopes, carefully folded documents, photographs, and a black notebook with frayed edges. My mother's notebook. There, in her precise, slanted handwriting, were all the lessons she gave me before she died. "Emily," she told me on her last lucid day, her eyes already dim, but her voice firm. "Never, ever let anyone think you are stupid just because you are kind. Kindness is not weakness. And a woman who knows when to keep silent is more dangerous than 100 screaming men." I smiled, remembering her. My mother had been a teacher too, and she taught me that information is power. I took out the first document, the deed to the house, original stamp notarized, in my name, Emily M. Harrison. Not a single letter mentioned Daniel or Sarah or anyone else. This house was mine, completely. No debts, no mortgage, no conditions. I had inherited it from my parents when they died, and Michael and I remodeled it with our own savings. Every brick, every window, every bathroom tile had been paid for with the sweat of 2 teachers who worked 40 years without stopping. Daniel knew that, or at least he used to, but maybe Sarah had made him forget, or maybe he had chosen to forget, because it was convenient to think this house would be his one day. I took out the second document, my will. I had made it 5 years ago when Michael and I decided to get our affairs in order. Back then, I left the house divided in equal parts to my 3 children, Daniel, Chloe, and Bella. But that will could be changed, And a dark part of me, the one that had been dormant for too long, began to consider that possibility very seriously. I kept digging. I found copies of the utility bills, electric, water, gas, property taxes, all in my name, all paid by me for the last 3 years. Even though Daniel and Sarah contributed a meager $150 a month that barely covered their share of the groceries. $150. A joke. The property taxes alone were over $500 every 2 months. The electric was $300, the gas $200, the maintenance, repairs, emergencies. I paid for all of it with my teacher's pension, a $4,000 a month pension that evaporated, maintaining a house for 3 people where only I was putting in real money. But the most interesting thing was at the bottom of the box. A white business card with blue lettering. David Fields, attorney at law, family and estate law. David had been my student in 3rd grade over 30 years ago, a skinny, serious boy who always read during recess. Now he was one of the most respected lawyers in the state, and he owed me a huge favor. I had convinced his mother not to pull him out of school when she wanted to put him to work. Mrs. Harrison, he had told me at Michael's funeral, squeezing my hand tightly. Anything you need, whatever it is, just call me. You changed my life. I looked at the card, then I looked at the documents, and then for the first time in weeks, I felt something that wasn't sadness or rage. I felt control. The next morning, Sunday, I waited for Daniel and Sarah to leave. They were going to have brunch with her parents, another one of those gatherings I was never invited to. As soon as I heard the car pull away, I picked up my phone and dialed David's number. He answered on the 3rd ring. Mrs. Harrison. David, honey, I'm so sorry to bother you on a Sunday. You are never a bother. Are you okay? Did something happen? The genuine concern in his voice almost made me cry. It had been so long since someone truly worried about me. I need your help. I need to review some documents and maybe make some changes. There was a pause. Changes to your will, among other things. Can I ask what's happening? And so sitting on my bed with the blue box open in front of me, I told him everything. The lock, the humiliation, the $180,000, the way my own home had become a prison where I was the intruder. David listened without interrupting. When I finished, his silence was different. It wasn't discomfort. It was calculation, planning. Ma'am, do you have proof of all this? I have receipts. I have the bank statement I found. I have text messages where Daniel promised to pay me back. And the house is completely in your name. Completely no debts, nothing. No debts. Perfect. His voice sounded firmer. Then this is what we're going to do. For the next hour, David explained a plan. It wasn't revenge, it was protection. It was setting legal boundaries that Sarah and Daniel could not break. First, update my will with a different notary, one they didn't know. Leave everything to my daughters with a special clause. It would state that Daniel could only inherit if he paid me back the $180,000 before my death. If he didn't, his share would be divided between Chloe and Bella. Second, make a notarized inventory of all my assets inside the house. Furniture, appliances, jewelry, everything. So it was clear what was mine and what was theirs. Third, prepare a legal ultimatum. If in 3 months they didn't start paying a fair rent, he calculated it at $2,500 a month, which was cheap for a house this size, or if they didn't leave, I could begin eviction proceedings. But David, I said, my voice breaking, he's my son. I know, ma'am. And that's why I'm giving him options that don't involve throwing him on the street tomorrow. But you have to protect yourself. What they are doing to you isn't love. It's abuse. That word hit me like cold water. Abuse. Was that what it was? Could you call it abuse when it came from your own child? Think about it, David continued. But don't take too long. The more time passes, the harder it will be to get your home and your peace back. We hung up. I sat on the bed, surrounded by papers, feeling like I had just crossed an invisible line. But the line had already been crossed, just not by me. I put everything back in the blue box. I hid it in the back of the closet behind the winter boxes that nobody ever touched. When Daniel and Sarah came home that afternoon, they found me in the kitchen, making chicken soup, like always, like the harmless old woman they thought I was. "Smells good," Daniel said, surprised to see me cooking. "I thought we were on a diet." Sarah added, her tone sharp. I smiled. That smile I had perfected over 40 years of dealing with difficult parents. "It's just for me. You two do your own thing." Sarah blinked, confused by my neutral tone. Daniel looked at me with something that almost seemed like guilt, but neither said anything, and I just kept stirring my soup, calmly. While in my mind, the pieces of a game they didn't even know existed were already moving, because I had learned something important. The person who shouts the loudest doesn't always win. Sometimes the winner is the one who knows how to wait in silence, with the patience of a teacher and the precision of a surgeon. And I had waited long enough. But before I took the next step, something happened that almost ruined everything. Something that made me question if I really knew the people I lived with. That day in front of the whole family, they treated me like I was nothing, but I let them talk. Because every word was just more rope for them to hang themselves with. It was Daniel's birthday, his 35th. Those dates were sacred in our family. Michael would wake up early to hang paper banners. I would bake his favorite cake, strawberry shortcake. Chloe and Bella would arrive with brightly wrapped gifts and hugs that lasted forever. But this year was different. "I'm organizing something small," Sarah told me 2 weeks before painting her nails in the living room. "Just us and my family. Something intimate." "And the girls?" I asked, referring to my daughters. "Oh, Emily, you know how they are. They always end up arguing over silly things. Better to just avoid the drama." They didn't argue over silly things. They argued because Sarah treated them with the same contempt she treated me, but Daniel never defended them. "What about the food?" I tried again. "Can I make the brisket Daniel likes, or my special lasagna?" "Don't worry about it. I'm ordering catering. You just relax." Relax, as if I were a guest in my own home, on my own son's birthday. The day arrived, a hot, sticky Saturday in April. Early that morning, Sarah began transforming the house. She took down the paintings I had discreetly rehung. She put out modern centerpieces with artificial flowers. She changed the tablecloths to minimalist gray ones that, according to her, matched the decor. I watched her from the kitchen doorway, invisible, while she ordered and organized my house as if it were hers. "Daniel, move that chair." "No, not there. More towards the corner. Perfect." My son obeyed without a word, moving furniture from one side to the other, sweating in his white t-shirt. "Do you need help?" I offered. Sarah didn't even turn around. "No, we're almost done." "Oh, actually..." "Yes. Could you go to your room while we set up? We're going to use the whole living room, and we don't want anything in the way." Anything. Or anyone. I went to my room like a punished child. I closed the door and sat on my bed, feeling the heat rise in my neck, the humiliation, the contained rage. But I stayed quiet. I took my cell phone from the nightstand and put it on silent. I left it on my dresser, strategically propped against a book. The camera aimed at the slightly open door. I started recording. If my years as a teacher had taught me anything, it was this. When someone is hurting you, document it. Words are forgotten. Witnesses change their stories, but a video doesn't lie. At 6 p.m., the guests started to arrive. First, Sarah's parents, James and Patricia. Yes, that was her name, and believe me, Patricia was the perfect name for someone so insufferable. Patricia walked in wearing a floral dress and expensive sunglasses, carrying a cake from a fancy Beverly Hills bakery. She looked around the living room with a critical eye, as if judging if it was up to her standards. "Oh, honey, you made everything look wonderful." "It really shows your good taste." Her good taste. "In my house, with my furniture shoved into the corners." Then came Sarah's sister Megan with her husband and their 2 spoiled kids. They immediately started running through the house, screaming like animals. One of them knocked over my pot of African violets. Nobody said anything. They didn't even pick it up. I stood in the hallway wearing my Sunday blouse and my pearl earrings, waiting for someone to greet me. Nobody did. Sarah walked right past me as if I were part of the wall. James glanced at me and nodded but said nothing. Patricia ignored me completely, and Daniel was too busy opening wine bottles and putting on music. I sat in the cornered chair, the one they had shoved next to the bookshelf, and I watched. The dining table was full of food I hadn't cooked. Sushi, carved meats, gourmet salads, bottles of wine that cost over $150 each, artisan bread, French pastries. All paid for with the money they supposedly didn't have, the same money that justified them not paying me a fair rent. "A toast to my son," Sarah shouted, raising her glass. "To his 35th birthday, and may this be the start of our best chapter together." Our best chapter, as if I hadn't been there for his first 35 years, as if I hadn't given birth to him, raised him, educated him, supported him when he was jobless, comforted him when his girlfriends left him. Everyone cheered, glasses clinked, laughter filled the room, and nobody, absolutely nobody, toasted me. Then Patricia, 3 glasses in, and with that condescending tone of people who think they're superior, dropped the bomb. "Oh, Sarah, it's so good that you two are so patient. Not everyone can stand living with their mother-in-law, am I right?" She laughed. That fake laugh that made my skin crawl. "She must be so grateful to you. Not all modern children sacrifice themselves like this. Taking care of their parents instead of just dumping them somewhere. Sacrifice. Taking care of, as if I were the burden." Sarah smiled, lowering her gaze with false modesty. "Oh, Mom, Emily does what she can. At her age it's hard, you know, but we manage, with patience." Emily. That name, which had sounded affectionate in the first few months, was now poison wrapped in honey. "It's just," Megan continued, pouring herself more wine, "I keep telling my husband, when his mom gets old, there's no way she's moving in with us. Straight to a nursing home. It's the healthiest thing for everyone." The laughter exploded. Daniel smiled uncomfortably, but said nothing. Nothing. James added his 2 cents. "Well, I think it's fine to help up to a point. But there comes a time when the old folks have to understand that their time is up. Let the young people live." The old folks. They talked about me as if I wasn't there, as if I were an object to eventually be disposed of. Patricia looked directly at me for the first time all night. "Right, Emily. You understand that they need their space, don't you? They're young. They have dreams. They can't be dragging along. Well, you know what I mean." I stayed quiet. I smiled. That smile I had perfected over weeks of enduring insults disguised as advice. And I let them keep talking. Because my cell phone was still recording. Every word, every cruel laugh, every derogatory comment. Sarah brought out the cake. They sang Happy Birthday. Daniel blew out the candles and made a wish. They asked him what he wished for. And he, looking at Sarah with loving eyes, said, "I wish that we'll have our own house soon, so we can start our real life." Our real life. As if these 3 years had been a lie, as if I were a temporary obstacle. I stood up from my chair. My legs were shaking, but I kept my back straight. 40 years of standing in front of 30 kids every day had taught me how to have presence. "I'm going to my room. Enjoy your party." Nobody stopped me. Nobody said, "Don't go." Nobody asked if I was okay. Sarah just muttered, "Rest well, Emily." I closed my bedroom door. I stopped the recording. 3 hours and 40 minutes of documented humiliation. I sat on the bed with the phone in my hands. I pressed play. I listened to it all over again. And this time I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity, because they had just given me exactly what I needed. Irrefutable proof that I wasn't imagining it, that it wasn't my fault, that this was abuse disguised as living together. I saved the video to the cloud. I made 3 backup copies. I sent one to David Fields' email with the subject line, "Urgent Additional Evidence." Then I lay down. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. Because I was no longer alone in this war. I had allies. I had proof. And above all, I had a plan. What they didn't know is that they had just dug their own graves. And I was holding the shovel. The next day, I did something Sarah will never forget. Something as simple as a letter, but as devastating as an earthquake. When Sarah read that letter, I watched the color drain from her face, because the right words said at the right time are worth more than 1,000 screams. That Sunday morning was quiet, too quiet, that uncomfortable stillness after a storm, when the air still smells like electricity. Daniel and Sarah didn't come out of their room until 11. I had been up for 2 hours. I'd had my coffee. I'd watered the few plants I had left, and I had done something I'd been planning all night. On the dining room table, among the wreckage of the party that no one had cleaned up, I saw the lock. They had just left it there next to the empty bottles and dirty plates, as if it were trash, as if it hadn't been the symbol of my humiliation just days before. I picked it up. It was light, cheap. The kind of lock you buy at any hardware store for $5. Nothing special. But to me, it represented a line that had been crossed. I went to the kitchen drawer where I kept my tools. I took out a pair of old pliers that Michael used for his home repairs. The lock gave way easily, too easily. With a little force and the right angle, the shackle snapped open. I smiled. That symbolic lock, so full of power in Sarah's mind, was useless. It was pure theater, an illusion of control, just like everything else she had built in this house. I left the broken lock on the kitchen counter where she would see it. But that wasn't enough. I needed to send a clearer message, a more permanent one. I went to my room. I took out paper and a pen. Not the computer, not a text message, a handwritten letter. Because there is something about handwriting that makes words heavier, that makes them dig in deeper. I sat at my desk. The same desk where I had graded papers from hundreds of students for decades. And I wrote. Not with rage, with surgical precision. Sarah, I decided not to say anything about the lock, because I understand you come from a family where distrust is normal. I don't blame you for that. Everyone carries their own baggage. But I want you to know something very important, something you may have forgotten, or perhaps were never told clearly. This house has an owner, and that owner is me. The documents are in my name. Original notarized deeds, impossible to change without my physical presence, my valid ID, and my fingerprint. My lawyer, David Fields, has certified copies of everything. And believe me when I tell you, he is very good at what he does. I know about the power of attorney you wanted me to sign 6 months ago, that paper you accidentally left on the table with the important parts highlighted. I am not stupid, Sarah. I am a teacher. I taught 800 children how to read over 42 years. I can read between the lines better than you can imagine. I also know about the $180,000 my son borrowed for a down payment on a house that never existed, money that turned into the car you drive every day, and I know what you said about me last night. I recorded every word. This is not a threat. It is information. Information you need to make better decisions from now on. This is your only warning. If you ever try to put another lock on me, literal or metaphorical, you will meet the Emily you do not want to know. Think very carefully before your next move. With the cordiality I still have left, Emily M. Harrison, legal owner of this house. I folded the letter into 3 perfect parts. I put it in a manila envelope, and in clear handwriting, I wrote on the front, "For Sarah, personal and confidential." I went to the pantry. The door was there unlocked open as it should always have been. I taped the envelope to the center of the door right at eye level. Impossible to miss. Then I went to the kitchen, made a chamomile tea, and sat down to wait. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:30, I heard footsteps. Sarah shuffled into the kitchen, hair messy, looking hungover. She went straight to the coffee machine. Then she saw it. The broken lock on the counter. She stopped cold. She picked up the lock, examined it, frowned. Then she looked toward the pantry. And there was the envelope, big, brown, with her name on it. I watched her turn pale before she even opened it. She tore the envelope open clumsily. She pulled out the letter, and she began to read. I kept sipping my tea, apparently calm, apparently distracted looking out the window at the garden. But I was watching her reflection in the glass. I saw her eyes widen with every line. I saw her mouth open in a little O of shock. I saw how her hands began to tremble by the time she reached the halfway point. When she finished reading, she folded the letter slowly. She looked at me. I didn't look away from the garden. "Emily." Her voice was small, scared. I didn't answer. "Emily, this is a misunderstanding." I turned my head slowly. I met her eyes, and I did not smile. For the first time in 3 years, I did not smile. "Which part is a misunderstanding? The lock I saw with my own eyes, the money for which I have your husband's bank statement as proof, or the things you said about me last night, recorded on video with a time and date?" She was speechless. The letter was shaking in her hands. We were just—" "Save it." My voice came out firm, cold. "I don't want explanations. I want you to understand that this house is mine, that I decide who lives here and under what conditions. And if you ever disrespect me again in any way, you're gone. No discussion, no second chances." "But Daniel is my son, and he will always have my love. But this house is mine, and in my house you show respect, or you find somewhere else to live." The silence that followed was dense, heavy, electric. Sarah clutched the letter to her chest. For a moment I thought she was going to cry or scream or make one of those dramatic scenes she loved so much, but she did none of that. She just nodded, barely, almost imperceptible, and she went to her room without another word. I heard the door close, then muffled voices, Daniel asking what was wrong, Sarah crying, explaining, probably exaggerating. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I had regained something. Not my whole house, not my whole life, but a small, vital piece of my dignity. I finished my tea, I washed my cup, and I went for a walk in the park, where I could breathe, without feeling like my air was being rationed. When I returned 2 hours later, the envelope was gone from the pantry. The broken lock was still on the counter. But now there was a note next to it, in Daniel's handwriting. "Mom, we need to talk." I took the note. I crumpled it in my fist, and I smiled, because finally, after 3 years of silence, my son wanted to talk, and I had a lot to say. That conversation changed everything, but not in the way I expected. They thought I was scared, but I was just waiting for the perfect moment. Daniel's note sat on the counter for 2 days, 2 full days where none of the 3 of us spoke a word to each other beyond what was strictly necessary. "Good morning." "Good night." "Do you need the bathroom?" Nothing more. The house became a minefield where every step had to be measured, where every closing door sounded like a gunshot, where the silence was so thick you could almost cut it with a knife. Sarah avoided my gaze. When we were in the kitchen at the same time, she'd grab what she needed and leave, like a frightened mouse. She no longer played loud music. She no longer reorganized my things without permission. She no longer made cutting remarks disguised as jokes. For the first time in 3 years, there was fear in her eyes when she looked at me. And I'm not going to lie, a dark part of me enjoyed that fear, but I knew this was temporary, that the initial fear would turn into resentment, that resentment would become strategy, that Sarah was not the type to give up easily, so neither did I. I began to document everything. Everything. I bought a new notebook from the corner store, green, spiral-bound. On the first page I wrote, "Household Expense Ledger, April 2025, and I began to write down every dollar that came out of my pocket. Electric $305, water $102, gas $210, property tax $520, groceries $750, internet $90, phone $40, total monthly payment by me $2,017, contribution from Daniel and Sarah $150. The numbers didn't lie. I was subsidizing their life by over $1,800 a month, and that wasn't even counting the space. The furniture, the appliances, the use of my car, which they sometimes took without asking, but the numbers weren't enough. I needed more. I started recording conversations. Not all the time, only when it mattered. My phone was always in my apron pocket, on record mode, discreetly. Like that Thursday afternoon when I heard Sarah talking on the phone in the backyard. She thought I had gone out. She didn't know I'd come back for my sweater. No, Mom, I'm not exaggerating. She's become unbearable. Now she's acting all high and mighty, as if she's the owner of— She paused. Well, yes, she is the owner legally, but after everything we've done for her, right, we've spent 3 years taking care of her, putting up with her old lady habits. Taking care of her? Putting up with. Old lady. I saved the recording, dated and timed. I also started making copies of everything: receipts, bank statements, messages. I put them in a yellow folder that I hid at my friend Linda's house. "Are you okay, Emily?" she asked me as we had coffee in her kitchen. She was worried about the dark circles under my eyes. "You look different." "I'm preparing," I told her simply, "for something big." I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. But I left her the folder with clear instructions. "If anything happens to me, you give this to David Fields. He'll know what to do." Linda squeezed my hand, scared. "Don't talk like that. Nothing is going to happen to you." "I know, but it's always better to be prepared." Meanwhile, back at home, I continued my performance. I started to pretend, to feign mild confusion, strategic lapses in memory, calculated mix-ups. "Oh, did I eat already?" I'd ask at dinner, even though I had eaten perfectly fine 2 hours before. "What day is it today?" I'd murmur, frowning at the calendar. "Where did I leave my glasses?" I'd search all over the living room. When they were hanging around my neck, I saw how Sarah and Daniel exchanged glances that said, "See, it's starting. She's starting to lose it." Perfect. Let them think that, because while they thought I was confused and weak, I was moving pieces on a board they couldn't even see. I called David 3 times that week. "I want to change my will," I said in the first call. "Are you sure, ma'am?" "Completely." In the second call, I asked him if it was legal to record conversations in my own home. He confirmed that yes, anything recorded on my own property was admissible. In the third call, I told him my plan. "It's risky," David warned me. "But if you're determined, I support you. Just promise me you won't do anything without consulting me first." "I promise," I lied, because I already had the next step planned. On Friday night, Daniel finally knocked on my door. "Mom, can we talk?" "Come in, son." He walked in slowly, hands in his pockets. He sat on the edge of my bed, in the same spot he sat as a boy when he had nightmares. "About the letter. You read it, Sarah showed it to me." He stared at the floor. "I didn't know you felt that way." That sentence almost made me laugh, or cry. I didn't know if it was honesty or willful blindness. "Daniel, look at me." He looked up. His eyes were Michael's eyes, the same brown eyes with golden flecks that I fell in love with 40 years ago. "Did you really not know, or did you not want to know?" He was quiet, and in that silence, I found my answer. "The $180,000, he started. "I don't want to talk about that right now. But Mom, I am going to pay you back, I swear. It's just that—" "Daniel," my voice was firm. "I didn't come into this world to be paid back. I came here to be respected, and in my own house, I do not feel respected. Do you understand the difference?" He nodded slowly. His eyes were glassy. "I'm sorry." "I know. But sorry isn't enough. I need to see changes, real changes." "What do you want me to do?" And there it was, the question I had been waiting for. "I want you to let me live in peace in my own house. I want your wife to treat me with basic respect. And I want you to start contributing fairly to the expenses, or find your own place." He shot up. "Are you kicking us out?" "No, I'm giving you options. $2,500 a month in rent. It's cheap for this house. Or you can save up and find your own space, like you always said you were going to do." "But Mom, we don't have that kind of money right now." "You have money for a luxury car, for expensive clothes, for salons and restaurants." My voice didn't waver. "You have money. You just don't want to use it on me." He stood there in the middle of the room, torn between 2 loyalties, and once again he chose silence. "Think about it," I said softly. You have 1 month." He left my room without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had been too harsh, if I had crossed a line I couldn't come back from. But when the sun rose, and I saw it streaming through my window, illuminating the photo of Michael on my nightstand, I knew I had done the right thing. Because love without respect isn't love, it's just habit. And I had been a habit for far too long. It was time to be a decision. What happened next surprised even me, because it turned out I wasn't the only one with secrets in this house. When I opened that chest in front of them, their eyes filled with greed. They didn't know it was a trap. The 1-month deadline I gave Daniel passed like sand through my fingers. 30 days where the tension in the house was so thick you could almost chew it. Sarah continued to avoid me, but I noticed something different in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. She was calculating, planning, waiting. So was I. It was a Sunday afternoon, one of those hot May afternoons where the air doesn't move and everything seems to stop. I was in my room reorganizing my summer closet. I took out old boxes, dresses I no longer wore, shoes I'd had since Michael was alive, and then, accidentally, I left my bedroom door halfway open. Just as Sarah was walking down the hall, I heard her footsteps stop, then that quiet, held breath of someone seeing something they shouldn't, but who can't look away. In my hands, I held the velvet jewelry box. It was beautiful, deep wine red. It was about 16 inches long by 10 inches wide. The velvet was worn at the corners, but it still had that dark, almost blood-red color. It looked ancient, mysterious. It had gold engravings on the lid, intertwined initials you could barely make out. It had been my grandmother's. It passed to my mother, and then to me. Inside, I kept the family jewels. There weren't many. We weren't rich. But every piece had history, had weight, had sentimental and financial value. I opened the box slowly as if unveiling a treasure, knowing perfectly well that Sarah was watching me from the hallway. I took out the pearl necklace, 36 natural pearls, irregular, with that creamy luster that only real pearls have. Michael had given it to me for our 20th anniversary. He had saved for 2 years to buy it. Then the gold earrings with emeralds, small, discreet, but genuine, inherited from my grandmother, who got them from her own mother. The Art Deco brooch, silver and onyx, a piece from the 1930s that my mother wore on special occasions. The last time I had it appraised 10 years ago, it was worth over $2,000. And finally, the ring. The engagement ring Michael gave me under a jacaranda tree in the park. White gold with a small, bright diamond surrounded by tiny sapphires. I placed them on my bed one by one, admiring them in the light from the window. And then, as if just noticing her presence, I turned toward the door. "Oh, Sarah, I didn't see you there." She took a step forward. Her eyes were fixed on the jewelry. She wasn't even pretending to be subtle. "Is that real?" I smiled, that proud grandmother smile. "Yes, honey, they're family heirlooms. They've been with us for generations." I picked up the pearl necklace, letting it run through my fingers. "This necklace is almost 50 years old. The pearls are natural sea, not like the ones today that are all cultivated and uniform." Sarah moved closer, hypnotized. "Can I?" She held out her hand. I gave her the necklace. She took it with exaggerated care, as if holding something priceless, which in reality it was. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Her eyes were shining. It reminded me of a child in front of a candy store. "It must be worth a lot." "Well, I've never tried to sell it. But yes, I suppose so." The old appraisal said that altogether it was worth about $20,000. But that was 10 years ago. Who knows now? I watched her swallow hard. I watched her fingers stroke the pearls with a mix of reverence and greed. And someday, this will be Daniel's. I finished the sentence for her. "Well, yours. For when I'm gone, of course. They're for the family." Something changed in her expression. A light switched on in her eyes, a dangerous light, one I knew well. I'd seen it in parents when they discovered a teacher had something they wanted. "Where do you keep something so valuable?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Right here, in my closet. I've always kept it here." I faked a worried look. Although lately I've been thinking maybe I should put it in a safe deposit box, just in case. "Yes, that would be much safer," she said quickly. "I can help you take it to the bank if you want." I bet she could. "Oh, honey, that's so kind. Yes, maybe we'll do that one of these days." I gently took the necklace from her and put everything back in the box. I locked it with the small key that hung on a chain. Sarah followed every movement with her eyes. "Well, I'll let you rest," she said finally, but her feet didn't move. She kept staring at the box as if memorizing it. When she finally left, I waited 5 minutes. Then I walked out of my room and casually passed through the living room. Sarah was on the sofa with her phone, but she wasn't watching videos, she was on Google. I read the searches on her screen from the reflection in the hallway mirror. Natural pearl necklace price, antique jewelry value, family heirloom inheritance law. I smiled to myself and kept walking. For the next few days, Sarah changed completely. Suddenly she was kind, attentive. She asked if I needed help with the groceries. She offered to make me tea. She even tried to cook something special for me, though it turned out horrible. "Emily," she said one Wednesday afternoon, her voice sweet as poisoned honey, "have you thought any more about the bank I'm free tomorrow? We could go together and open that safe deposit box." "Oh, yes, but I don't know. I'm worried they'll ask for a lot of paperwork." "Don't you worry. I'll help you with everything. I can even put my name on the box, too. So if anything happens to you, we'll have access. For Daniel." There it was, the real reason. "What a good idea," I said, faking innocence. "Let me think about it." But I didn't think about it. Instead, I called David. "She took the bait," I told him on the phone that night. I was locked in my bathroom with the water running so they wouldn't hear me. "Are you sure about this, ma'am? It's a risk." "I know, but I need her to show her true colors, and this is perfect." "Do you want me to prepare the documents?" "Yes, but with the clause we discussed." The next day I told Sarah I had made the appointment at the bank for Friday. Her face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Perfect, I'll go with you. Don't you worry about a thing." Friday arrived. We went to the bank. We opened a safe deposit box. We put the jewelry box inside, and we signed the papers. What Sarah didn't know, because she didn't read the fine print that the bank manager explained quickly, and she signed without paying attention, was that the box required 2 keys to open. I had one. David Fields had the other, with very specific legal instructions. It could only be opened if I died of natural causes certified by doctors, and only after a complete notarial review of my final will. If anything happened to me suspiciously, the box would be automatically frozen and its contents would become part of a legal investigation. Sarah had access to the box. Technically, her name was on the papers, but she couldn't open it without me. And if I died, she still couldn't open it. Without going through a legal process that would expose any irregularity, it was the perfect trap. We left the bank. Sarah was happy, believing she had won something, believing she had secured her future. She didn't know that she had just signed her own sentence, because I wasn't just protecting myself from her. I was protecting myself from any convenient accident that might happen to me. And above all, I was creating evidence of her true character, evidence that I was going to need very, very soon. What happened next was so fast, not even I was prepared, because Sarah made a mistake that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning when it all exploded, and I made sure there were witnesses. The calm after the bank visit lasted exactly 12 days. 12 days where Sarah acted like the perfect daughter-in-law. She asked about my health. She offered to drive me to the doctor. She even gave me a wool shawl. "So you don't get cold at night." I accepted everything with smiles and thank yous. But inside I was preparing, because I knew this was the eye of the storm, that deceptive quiet before everything breaks loose. And I was right. On Thursday night, while I was pretending to be asleep, I heard voices from their room. They were arguing, quietly, but loud enough for me to catch stray words. Can't go on like this. House should be ours. She's old. How much longer? The notary said we can. My heart sped up. I got up silently barefoot, and I put my phone on record mode, pressing it against the wall we shared. The app David recommended amplified the sound. What I heard froze my blood. My cousin works at a nursing home, Sarah was saying. He says with a doctor's certificate saying she can't take care of herself anymore. We can have her committed, and then the house would be free. I don't know, Sarah. She's my mom. So what? She's been in the way for years. Look at us, Daniel. We can't have kids because we live with your mother. We can't have our own life. This house should have been ours ever since your dad died. But legally there are ways. My uncle is a lawyer. He says with a power of attorney and a diagnosis of dementia, we can take control of her assets. And you've seen how she's been lately. She forgets things. She confuses the days. Even the doctor might certify that she's not well. I felt sick, not because of what they were planning, but because my performance had worked. Too well. I don't know if I can do that. Daniel's voice was weak, hesitant, but not scandalized, not outraged, like a son should be. Oh, Daniel, don't be a coward. It's for our good, for our future. Besides, she'll be taken care of at the home. It's better for everyone. The silence that followed was worse than any word, because it meant Daniel was considering it. My own son was considering having me locked away to get my house. I saved the recording, I sent it to the cloud, to 3 different email addresses, and then I knew. It was time. I couldn't wait any longer. Friday morning, I called my 2 daughters. Chloe, Bella, I need you to come to the house tomorrow, both of you, 10 o'clock in the morning. It's urgent. Are you okay, Mom? Chloe asked, alarmed. I'm fine, but I need you here. And bring your husbands. It's important. Then I called David. It's time. Are you sure? Completely. Prepare everything we discussed. The full documentation. All of it. And I need you here tomorrow at 10, with the notary if possible. Understood, ma'am. Finally, I called my friend Linda. I need you here tomorrow as a witness, and bring your phone fully charged. What are you going to do, Emily? I'm going to get my life back. Saturday dawned clear, one of those days where the sky is so blue it hurts to look at it. I got up early. I got dressed in my best blouse, the blue one with white flowers that Michael gave me for our last anniversary. I put on my pearl earrings. I combed my hair carefully. If this was going to be a battle, I would enter it like a queen. At 9:30, they started to arrive. First Chloe with her husband Robert, my oldest with that worried look she's had since she was a little girl. Mom, what is going on? Wait until everyone is here, honey. Then Bella with her husband Javier and my 2 grandkids. The kids ran to hug me. Grandma, we haven't seen you. I know, my loves, I know. Linda arrived on time with a bag of pastries, and finally David Fields, with his leather briefcase, and an older gentleman in a suit whom he introduced as Notary Mendez. Daniel and Sarah were in the kitchen eating breakfast. When they saw all these people walk in, their faces changed. What is this? Sarah asked, standing up. It's a family meeting, I said calmly. Sit down, everyone. I have something important to say. And we gathered in the living room, me in the main armchair, Michael's chair, my daughters on either side, David and the notary standing beside me, the rest scattered on chairs from the dining room. Sarah and Daniel remained standing tense, like cornered animals. You can sit down, I repeated. It was not a suggestion. They sat slowly on the gray sofa, the one they had bought. I took a deep breath, and I began. I have gathered you all here because I need everyone to hear this, and I need witnesses for what I am about to say. I took out my cell phone. I connected it to the Bluetooth speaker and played the recording from Thursday night. Sarah's voice filled the room. My cousin works at a nursing home. He says with a doctor's certificate, we can have her committed. I watched the color drain from Daniel's face. I watched Sarah's mouth open, but no sound came out. Chloe put her hand to her mouth. Bella started to cry. I let the recording play to the very end. to the part where Daniel didn't say no, where he just stayed silent. When it finished, the silence in the room was absolute. "Mom," Daniel tried to speak. I held up my hand. "I'm not finished." "This isn't all." I took out the yellow folder I had hidden at Linda's house. I opened it on the coffee table. "Here are all the receipts for this house for the last 3 years. Electric, water, gas, property taxes, maintenance. All paid by me, with my $4,000 a month pension." I put another document on top. "Here is the bank statement, proving that the $180,000 I lent for a down payment on a house was used to buy a luxury car, a car I have never used, a car I was never even offered a ride in." Another document. "And here are the screenshots of the text messages between Sarah and her sister, where she literally says, 'A few more months of putting up with the old woman and this house will be ours.'" Sarah jumped to her feet. "You spied on my phone, that's illegal." And David spoke for the first time, his voice professional and cold. "Actually, ma'am, everything in this folder was obtained legally. The recordings were made on Mrs. Harrison's private property where she has every right to record. The documents are copies of originals, and the messages were photographed from a laptop that your husband left open in a common area of the house." Sarah turned to Daniel. "Say something, don't just sit there." But Daniel said nothing. He stared at the floor. I continued. I still wasn't done. "I want you to know," I said, looking directly at Daniel, "that this house will never be yours as long as I am alive. I have already changed my will. If anything happens to me, the house is to be divided only between Chloe and Bella. Daniel can only inherit if he first repays the $180,000 he owes me. If he does not repay it before my death, his share is void." The notary, Mr. Mendez, held up a document. "Here is the updated will. Signed and certified 3 days ago. It is completely legal and binding." Daniel finally looked up. He had tears in his eyes. "Mom, I never wanted—" "You never wanted what, Daniel? You never wanted to stay quiet while your wife plotted to lock me away. You never wanted to lie to me about the money. You never wanted to make me feel invisible in my own home." My voice cracked, but I held firm. "I am going to give you one option. One, you have 30 days to get out of this house. I am willing to lend you $5,000 for a deposit on an apartment. It's more than you deserve, but I am your mother, and I will not leave you on the street." "This is ridiculous," Sarah screamed. "You can't just kick us out." David intervened again. "Yes, she can, ma'am. This is her house. You do not have a lease. You do not pay rent. Legally, you are guests who have overstayed their welcome. If you do not leave voluntarily in 30 days, we will proceed with a legal eviction. And with this evidence, believe me, we will win, quickly." Sarah opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, but no coherent sound came out. Daniel, my son, the boy who once promised to build me a huge house. He broke down and cried, "Mom, forgive me, please." And there, watching my son cry, I felt something inside me break too. But there was no going back. What they failed to understand was simple. You don't beg for love, you earn it, and you lose it. And they had lost it. A long time ago. Now I was just taking back what was always mine, my dignity. What happened in those 30 days was something I will never forget, for better and for worse. I gave them one last chance. Leave with dignity, or leave with shame. They made their choice, but it was too late for pride. The 30 days that followed that meeting were the strangest of my life. The house became a divided space, as if an invisible line separated enemy territories, them in their room, me in mine. And in between, a silence so heavy it hurt to breathe. Sarah never spoke another word to me, not one. When we were in the kitchen, she'd grab what she needed and leave like a bat out of hell. Her eyes threw daggers of hatred at me every time she saw me. No more fake kindness, no more masks, and in a twisted way that gave me peace. Because finally we were being honest. But Daniel, Daniel was different. My son became a ghost, wandering the house with slumped shoulders and a lost gaze. He lost weight. He stopped dressing well. Sometimes I'd find him sitting in the garden, staring at Michael's plants, but not really seeing anything. One afternoon, 11 days after the meeting, he knocked on my door. "Mom, can I come in?" I was embroidering a tablecloth, the one thing that always calmed my nerves. I put the needle down. "Come in." He walked in slowly, as if afraid of breaking something. He stood in the middle of the room, hands in his pockets. "I want you to know, we found an apartment across town. It has 2 bedrooms. It's fine. I'm glad." He nodded, but he didn't leave. There was something else he wanted to say. "Mom, I never wanted things to get to this point." I put the embroidery in my lap. I looked him straight in the eye, those eyes of Michael's, that once looked at me with childish adoration. "But they did, didn't they?" "Yes." His voice broke. "And it's my fault, not Sarah's. Mine, because I failed you. I let it all happen. I stayed quiet when I should have defended you." I felt something in my chest loosen, just a little. "Why, Daniel? Why did you do this to me?" He sat down on the floor, right there, like when he was a kid and came to confess he'd broken something. Tears streamed down his face unchecked, because I was scared of losing her. Sarah has always been intense, demanding, and I thought if I didn't do what she wanted, she would leave me, like the others. He wiped his face on his sleeve. "I know it sounds pathetic. I know it's not an excuse, but it's the truth. And me? You weren't afraid of losing me. I thought you would always be there, that mothers always forgive, that I could do anything, and you would still love me." The brutal honesty of that confession hit me like a stone, because he was right. I had allowed it. I had allowed him to believe my love was unconditional, to the point of self-destruction, that he could hurt me without consequences. A mother's love is big, Daniel, but it is not infinite. It has limits, and you crossed all of mine. He sobbed, loudly, like a child who finally understands that actions have real consequences. "Will you ever be able to forgive me?" That question hung in the air between us. The truth was, I didn't know the answer. Not yet. "I don't know, son, but I know this. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, and even if I forgive you one day, things will never be the same, because I've changed. And you will have to change too, if you want to get back any part of what you lost." He stayed there on the floor of my room, crying like I hadn't seen him cry since he was 8 years old and fell off his bike. And I let him cry, because those tears were necessary. They were part of his lesson. The following days were filled with boxes and moving trucks. Daniel and Sarah packed their things with mechanical movements. I stayed in my room most of the time, letting the process happen without my presence. Chloe and Bella came over to help me reclaim the house afterward. We got rid of the gray furniture. We brought the old story-filled furniture out of storage. We put the terracotta curtains back up. We hung the paintings of the wine country. "Are you okay, Mom?" Bella asked me as we hung the family photos Sarah had taken down. "I'm sad," I admitted, "but I'm also at peace. For the first time in years, I am at peace." On the 29th day, one day before the deadline, a moving truck arrived. Daniel and 2 movers carried everything out: clothes, furniture, boxes, that gray sofa I hated so much. Sarah supervised everything, her face a mask of contained fury. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even look at me. She got in the car bought with my money, and left without looking back. Daniel was the last one out. He was carrying a box of photographs. He stopped at the door. "Thank you for the $5,000. I'm going to pay you back, along with the other $180,000. I don't know when, but I will." "Don't do it for me, Daniel. Do it for you, so you learn that debts are paid and promises are kept." He nodded. And then, in a small voice, he asked, Can I come visit you someday, when things are calmer?" I thought about it. I really did. Call me in 6 months. If by then you've started to keep your word, if you've shown that you're changing, we can try to rebuild something. But it will be different, with boundaries, with respect. I understand. He moved as if to hug me. I tensed up. I wasn't ready. He noticed. He stopped. And instead, he just gave me a kiss on the forehead. I love you, Mom. And I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. And he left. I closed the door behind him. I leaned against the wood. And finally, after months of holding it in, of being strong, of being strategic, I allowed myself to cry. I didn't cry for Daniel, or for Sarah, or even for the lost money. I cried for the broken illusion of what could have been, and never was. For the son I raised to be good, who somehow got lost along the way, for the years I would never get back. But I also cried with relief, because finally, my house was mine again. The following months were about healing. I started inviting my friends over on Thursdays again, Linda and the others. We drank coffee and ate pastries at my table, without having to ask permission. Without feeling like we were in the way, Chloe and Bella started coming over on Sundays with the grandkids. The house filled up again with children's laughter, the smell of a good Sunday roast, and those long talks that only happen in families that truly love each other. I adopted a cat, an orange stray who showed up in my garden one afternoon. I named him Michael, because he had those same golden eyes as my husband, and that same calm way of observing the world. And little by little I started to remember who I was, before I became the invisible woman in my own life. 6 months later, Daniel called. Mom, I paid back the $5,000. I deposited it today, and I have $3,000 saved for the other. I know it's a long way to go, but I'm working on it. How are you, son? There was a pause. I'm better. Sarah and I are in therapy. She's still angry with you, but at least she's working on understanding why she did what she did. And I am too. I'm learning to set boundaries, to not be so afraid. I'm glad. Can I see you for coffee just half an hour? I thought about it, and this time the answer was easier. Yes, but just you, and at a coffee shop, not here. I'm not ready for you to be in this house yet. I understand. I love you, Mom. I love you too, son. But loving doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering and choosing every day to rebuild what was broken. 1 year after that family meeting that changed everything, I'm sitting in my garden. The afternoon sun is warm on my face. Michael the cat is sleeping on my lap. My plants are blooming because I finally have time to care for them. Not everything is perfect. I still have hard days, days where I miss the idea of what could have been, days where I wonder if I was too harsh. But then I remember the lock, the humiliation, the nights I felt like a stranger in my own bed, and I know I did the right thing. Because I got back something more valuable than a house. I got back my dignity, my peace, my right to live without fear, without guilt, without having to justify my existence. Daniel visits me once a month. We have coffee. We talk. We've had 4 visits now, and each one is a little less awkward than the last. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship we had. Probably not, but we're building something new, something based on mutual respect, on clear boundaries, on love that is no longer blind, but aware, and that is enough. Because I learned something I should have learned a long time ago. True wealth isn't what you own. It's what you refuse to let anyone take from you, your peace, your dignity, your right to exist without apologizing, and that no one will ever take from me again. I'm sharing this story not to be judged or applauded. I'm sharing it because I know there are so many women out there living through the same thing, feeling invisible in their own homes, putting up with it because they think it's what they have to do. And I want you to know this. You do not have to put up with it. You do not have to be a martyr. You can set boundaries. You can say no. You can take your life back. It is never too late to defend yourself. It is never too late to choose yourself. I did it at 67 years old, and if I could do it, you can too. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Not your son, not your daughter-in-law, not anyone. You are enough. You have always been enough, and you deserve respect, especially in your own house, especially in your own life. Good morning. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think, if it gave you the strength to do what you need to do, leave me a comment. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me if you are fighting your own battle. You are not alone. None of us are. Hit like if this story reminded you of your own worth. Subscribe to keep hearing stories of women who decided to stop being invisible. Because our voices matter. Our stories matter. And as long as there is someone willing to tell them, there will be hope for all the rest. With love and respect, Emily. End.